According to the Steam page, FromSoft's Elden Ring requires an nVidia GTX 1060 at a minimum. The trouble is, we're in what I like to call the scalper pandemic. Times are tough all round and not everyone can get a 1060. Let's see what the game thinks about the older model. The 60 FPS cap in Elden Ring is something of a great equaliser, meaning any serious Soulsborne fans don't need to lament their lack of the latest and greatest hardware to have a good time here. The only real limiting factors become your desired resolution and quality settings. If you were hoping to come close to 60 FPS at 1080, I'm afraid you're out of luck. The smoothest frame rate available was at the low preset, which still fell short of even the 50 FPS mark by a couple of frames. Those looking for better quality, and who don't mind losing a few frames in the process, could consider medium with its average of 40 FPS, or even a step up to the rarefied air of the high preset. The 34 FPS average and 28 FPS 1% lows here might be a touch too close to the edge of playability, however, as I'm sure there are probably some more demanding sections later in the game that would see frame rates plummet. As I found when trying to play at 1080 maximum, sub 30 FPS in this game becomes pretty hard to play, as already difficult parries and dodges become nigh on impossible. If you want to play at 30 FPS and higher settings, then it might be worth taking a dip into the resolution settings and dropping to 1600 by 900. This doesn't quite bring things up to the same level as, say, the GTX 970, but it does help gaming at high by over 15%, now averaging over 40 FPS and not dipping below 30. Maximum is borderline playable at 1600 by 900 with an average of over 31 FPS, but lows still dipping into the mid-20s. Low and medium see their averages boosted again by 15 to 20%, but as I'd argue they weren't exactly unplayable at 1080, dropping to 900 in search of better FPS is a half measure. No, if you want to get close to 60 FPS, I'm afraid this means going all the way down to 720. With anti-aliasing, this can prove to look surprisingly decent, but at the low preset you might believe you're playing on a PS3. This is, alas, the only way the GTX 960 is achieving close to 60 FPS the whole time. Medium is good, and looks a lot better, but you won't be seeing 60 FPS often. I joke that gamers who grew up in PAL regions should be satisfied with 50 FPS, and 50 is certainly about as good as can be reached at the high preset. Maximum is still borderline for playability, averaging high 30s, but dipping below 30 too often for my liking. Plus, turning quality up to max and resolution to minimum doesn't make much sense to me. The eagle-eyed among you might have noticed that for the 720 results I've switched from my standard 6-core test config to the reasonably priced gaming PC setup with 4 cores at 3.7 GHz. I did the same for a run at 1600 by 900 and saw pretty much what I'd expected from my testing with the GTX 970. Frames aren't impacted all that much, sometimes higher, sometimes lower, as might be expected with an open world game. Minimums are affected, however, so while you'll have a fine experience on an old hyper-threaded quad-core like an i7 6700 or Ryzen 3 3300X, you'll get less stutter with a more modern 6 to 8 core multi-threaded CPU. Hope that's useful, thanks for watching, kindly do the usual YouTube things if you feel so inclined, and I'll see you next time.